Hello, viewers. Good evening. And today I'm back with the next new episode of Ask John Show Live. So many of you are working on different businesses, and you already know that digital business, digital data is become one of the most important asset for business right now. And if you are considering for that one as a manager, director, or CEO, or as an entrepreneur, for everyone is important, the data right now. And that is something you find the right show today, because in this show we're going to talk about how you can have the right data in front of you so you can preserve it, you can protect it, you can build the right framework of governance around it so you can build new business on top of it, or even can monetize it in short term, long term, or midterm as well too. So for this session today, we have a great personals going to join with us on this live show. You probably have seen in our guest previously as well too. So our guest has a almost 30 plus year of experience in data governance, and he's been very instrumental in this data governance and data management and so on. So he was also one of the first generation CIOs in Singapore as well too. Besides that, he was a managing director of Accenture Singapore as well. Currently, he's one of the professor of Singapore National University. And he's also been very involved with PMI, Cloud Security Alliance, and so on. So, friends, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so glad to have our today's guest, Mr. Alex Wei, joining with us. Hi, Alex. How are you doing today?
Hi, thank you. I'm fine.
Thank you very much for joining today's session as well too. It's been your second or third time you've joined our show, and I've been so delighted to have you in our show, because every time you are in the show means there's a lot of things we'll be discussing about that. So as we talked about, today is going to be focused about data governance and how the company can use this data governance frameworks to build up new businesses or even monetize it, so on. So I think let's start with this one. From you, when you talk about what is data governance, how you want to explain this one, Alex?
Yeah, okay. Let me explain, because data governance seems to be quite a new term to a lot of people. Well, we heard about this thing called IT governance. It's about how to use IT effectively in organization. That's IT governance. So data governance is actually part of IT governance. It's a component of it, right? And why is data governance so important today? Is because of the proliferation of data, which I will talk about later. So data governance, in short, is actually rules and regulations and all these principles that you place in the organization for the facilitation of the use of information, of data in the organization, which I'll explain a little bit why it is so important to have this governance so that people can use data effectively.
Hi, Alex. Go on.
So I lost you for a while, John.
I'm still here. Please go on.
Yeah, so I said I will talk more. I just explained that data governance is a set of rules to facilitate the use of data in the organization. Without this, then people may not be able to use data effectively, and they may not know where the data is, and also who can use, and what are the security issues and all that. So that, in short, is what is data governance.
Thank you, Alex. I think that was a very, in a nutshell, it has been a great that you point out so many things about what is the data governance. So I think many people also wanted to understand why is it so important? How would you like to say it?
Yeah, okay. Data has been here for a long, long time. Yeah, it's just that in the past, when I first became CIO 30 years ago, yeah, data is not so abundant in the organization. And most of all, data is quite structured, all right? And today, of course, data is they're all over the place. Yeah, the organization collects a lot of data, and there are also all kinds of data. Instead of just structured data, we have a lot of unstructured data. They have data like video. They have data like voice clips, and also you have lots of passages from email, and all these are very unstructured, okay, data which are collected from all sources, interaction with the customers, interaction with associates, with partners, collect data. And so why then is this data so important? Because data we know today facilitates business. Okay, it's from data we can gain insights into the customer, into your competitors, into also the way you should do things in an organization. So data can also describe the business processes. Now, data to an organization is a very important asset because today almost all organizations use data in order to advance the business interests. So we treat data as if it is, we call it the new oil. All right, data is oil, and so it moves the engine of the whole business, and also it is valuable in a way that it can actually be translated into revenue if you use them correctly. And of course, data is also so valuable that people will want to take away from you the data. And so security becomes a very big issue in data governance.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning about there's so many things you have mentioned here, which is really valuable about the data is the new well, data is the new currency. And also data is valuable so people can take away from you too. So that's why data security is so much important. And that's why the data governance come into a really important play. Thank you, Alex, for sharing this one. I just want to say this one. Isn't the data governance a new thing or it's been happening for a long period of time? How do you want to say it, Alex?
I think the term data governance is quite new. Yeah. In the past, we have a data dictionary, we have a data administration. You have a data administrator that administrate the data dictionary, so that there's a common definition for data in the organization. And there are also data models to describe how data is being utilized in the organization. So that is, in a sense, the old way of data governance, right? Just making sure that there's no data redundancy, data definitions are consistent throughout the whole organization. That was the old way of data governance. And today, of course, we're talking about data governance as a set of rules and principles to facilitate the use of data. So we will have data governance can describe how you collect, how you store, and how you retrieve and disseminate the data. Okay. So in a sense, yes, data governance as we see it today is new.
All right. So thank you for bringing up this one that is actually new and it can be not really old thing. I mean, the way the companies was doing it is about data administrator, but actually data governance is not like just data administration and so on. So with this, actually, I wanted to sell this one is about why the data is so special and why do we really need a data governance rule? How do you want to put it, Alex?
Can you repeat that question again?
So why the data is so important and why we need governance rules and what did we do in the past and compared to now and what it was doing before and what we should do now right now? How would you like to give us some bullet about that one? I think viewers will be very valuable input from that.
Yeah. Okay, in the first place, in the past, IT is not very pervasive, all right? So not everybody have access to IT system, and data we collect in a form of very structured data. So, for example, you have a customer, they come in, you ask them to fill in a form, and all the forms are captured in a database. The data is captured in a database, and they're very structured. Okay, so name, address, and all this. Yeah. So all we need in the past was to make sure that data is consistent throughout the organization. So we have the role of a data administrator, and who looks after the data dictionary of the organization. And then later, when more and more data are being collected, we have what we call data warehousing, all right? Because we need to then make sure that data is not in bits and pieces all over the place in the organization. We want to put it in the central storage. So we have a data warehouse where we have rules to make sure the data is consistent, they're clean. They call it the clean data, and they put it inside storage. And then we have retrieval tools for retrieval of this information, because you can put a lot of information into the data warehouse, and if they are not being used, then of course it's of no use to anybody. So there must be rules, because data is so valuable now. So there must be rules concerning who owns the data, for example, who maintains the data, who can read the data. Yeah. So governance is about all of this actually, yeah, to make sure that data is being used correctly in the organization and should not be used by unauthorized readers. So somebody who's not authorized to take a look at the data should not have access to the data. So there's a set of rules about who can access, who can update, who can maintain, and who can delete the data. All right.
Yeah, I think you brought up some really good point on this one, Alex. Yes, who actually can see it, who can update it, who can read it, who can get a copy out of it, and that's something you brought up some really good point. Thank you, Alex, for giving those bullets.
Yeah.
So with that one, I want to move to the next question. This one, do you want to say about how often we often hear that the organizations want to be a customer focused or data centric? Do you complement or contradict on that thing, Alex?
Yeah. Okay. So now we come to the point. I mean, you have all the governance about data. So what is data going to be used for? All right. So from data we gather intelligence. All right. We get insight into customer behavior, customer preferences. Ultimately, it's the customer that gives us revenue. So we need to have a very good insight into the customer, whether they will continue to do business with us or not. So what we call data analytics. Apply analytics onto the data to obtain information. We can have trend analysis. We can have business intelligence from that, and you can see patterns of the behavior of the customer. All right. So data by itself is of no use unless it is being analyzed for specific purpose. For example, where to locate your stores, where to locate your salespeople, which place, what type of demographics of the customer prefer our products. So data need to be analyzed. Okay, so the question is, some organizations say, okay, we are customer focused. Right? So what does it mean we're customer focused? I mean, you can't be customer focused unless you have information. All right. So for example, if you have a company, you have many divisions, and each one serving the same set of customer, every one of them collecting information, then you have a lot of disparity between the information collected from each division. So that way, you are actually not customer focused, because the customer will be irritated, but every division collect information from me. So are you one company or are you 3 companies, right? So customer focus means delighting the customer, make it easy for them to do business with us. All right. So in order to be able to do that, we have to be able to use our data effectively. So data-centric is one of the focus, is one of the way that we can so better serve our customer. But however, when you say data-centric, what is the opposite of data-centric? All right. Then it's called application-centric. So some organizations are application-centric in a sense that they develop system because they need a system, and then without thinking whatsoever about the data which the system will produce. So when you have application-centric organization, you have islands of data everywhere, and when you try to harmonize all the data and all the systems, you become very difficult, right? So a data-centric organization will use data to serve the strategy of the company. For example, if your business strategy has a certain direction, the vision is a certain direction, then you then discuss how then should we collect data in order to fulfill our mission and objective. All right. So then by thinking about the data first, then we build the system to collect the data. So that's what we call a data-centric organization. All right. So think of what you need before you start collecting. So if it's an application-centric organization, you collect the data and then you wonder what to do with them. So for a data-centric organization, you actually think about how should we serve the customer, what are the data we should require, and then we build the systems to collect and process the data.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. I think that was a lot of great points in that one. So viewers, I just wanted to summarize this one. So there are key things that what I just taking note, and this one is this one. When you want to do in a business or you're doing any particular projects, first think about why, and then what, and then you start talking about executing your collection plan of the data. And don't be very much confused of this data centric with an application centric, because application centric where it's the other way down, but people most of the time think about what they have, they try to make the best use of it rather than thinking way ahead what to collect, which is the point number one. And number three is about you want to be a customer centric. If you want to be customer centric, you gotta be data centric, because without a data centric, you will not be able to, never be able to be true customer centric. So I mean, and don't jump out on these two things. Thank you, Alex. I think those are great points for viewers to really understand those things. So with that one, I want to move to the next thing. This one, does data governance presents obstacles to the use of data in the organizations? Many people sometimes speak about it. I mean, now we have governance and we cannot access the data, and we cannot be agile, and we are slow down. How do you see it, Alex?
I mean, when you have data, you have insights, and you can use the data for a lot of purposes. All right. And therefore, I see that when you serve the customer, you have very good knowledge about the customer. You can able to delight, and you can even predict using data to see whether the customer is going to run away from you. I mean, you can see from the trend that, from his behavior. We call that the customer life cycle analysis. Right? So the customer is either going to do more business with us, or he's going to do less business with us. So how do we know unless we have insights into their behavior, and that can only be arrived at from data analytics.
So do you see that this data governance actually is an obstacle for people to access the data? Some people complain about this one. How do you want to address this one, Alex?
Oh, okay, all right. So governance does not mean like government, all right? So some people they mistake governance equal to government. That means we are we have governed by laws and rules and regulation. Actually, governance is to facilitate the use of data and collection of data. So without proper governance, people will not know where the data is residing. So for example, if you have a application-centric organization where data held by various divisions, so you want a piece of information, you either go and collect it yourself, or you have to go and hunt around the organization. Who has this information about the customer? You know, and so with proper data governance, you can actually go to a central location, metadata or dictionary or roadmap, and then you can actually find where is this data, who has it, okay, where can I get it? So data governance actually does not prevent people from using data. In fact, it helps them. Okay, you give them a roadmap where to locate. You give them also an idea how accurate the data, because we have information about when it was it collected, when was it updated, who owns the data. So if the data has run into problem, then we can go find owner. Hey, what is this? You know, what data are you collecting? So it gives a very good knowledge about the data repository that we have in the organization. Without which, then of course, without which then people will be hunting here and there and very disruptive. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Alex, for sharing on this one too. So with this one, I want to move to the next question. What do we need to have in place to have a good data governance? Is hiring a chief data officer the silver bullet, or what could be even cost effective or even more better option? How do you think about it?
Okay, so of course, a lot of our organization, they think we appoint a CIO with all your IT problem will be solved. Yeah. Okay. So the same way they say we have innovation, so we appoint a chief innovation officer, and everything
Solve
will be
it.
okay. Yeah. So similarly, we have data problems. Okay. So what will you do? We appoint a chief data officer. Yeah, but you see, that the person you appoint as chief data officer, he cannot do magic, all right, unless he's supported by the whole management. The management must support the efforts of the chief data officer. So his role is more of sort of person to pull all things together. For example, getting a data governance council, a set of people who will determine the policy of the data. For example, how long to keep the data, where do you store the data, how do you, what frequency you collect the data. This is what a data governance council. And then there are people who goes around spreading the message of data governance. They call them data stewards. Okay, the data stewards go around, and so the chief data officer is probably the sort of the secretary. Okay, so he is like the chief operating officer, for example. In the CEO must always be the person responsible. Okay, so the CDO will be the one who collect all the information for the CEO to make decision concerning data. So make no mistake, the CEO is responsible for everything in the organization. But of course, he doesn't need to do everything. He needs to be informed, so he makes the right informed decision. So the chief digital officer, the chief data officer will go around with his stewards and the council members and gather the information for the CEO to make the right decision about the use of data.
All right, thank you. So I think this is a pretty good thing. Is you brought it up as a CIO's roles and chief digital officer. What are the difference you see between a CIO and chief data officer?
Okay, the CIO is a facilitator of IT. Okay, the use of IT. The chief data officer is a facilitator of the use of data. So usually it's a subset. the chief data officer is reports to the CIO, or he can directly report to the CEO. It depends on the organization, but they have quite distinct roles. In that, one is the governor of data, okay, which actually empowers the organization in a way that they give information and business intelligence and insight into the operation of company, into the customer, into the supplier, whatsoever, right? They give information. Whereas a chief information officer, he is looking after the deployment of information systems to facilitate business processes. Okay, so he is the chief project manager of all the projects in the organization, and he makes sure that IT is used effectively. And another role which CIO now have to play is to make sure that the company adopts and adapt to the emerging technologies. Right. That is not the responsibility of the chief data officer, however. So the CIO looks after technology and the use of technology in the organization.
Thank you, Alex. I think it was a very spot on differentiation between these two roles. I think that's clear of the clear differentiation. Bro, the last question is gonna be I'm gonna taking from my side, and then I'm gonna open up for the questions from the audience. The audience who are watching the stream right now, please go ahead and comment below in any social media, anywhere if you see the stream, just comment below and we'll pick up your questions. We always started to see some great questions, and we will love to have more, and then we will try to answer as many questions as possible. So with that, my last question is this one. Any other advice to companies that want to transit to data governance?
Okay. Firstly, we have to treat data with respect and treat it like a very important, as good as your money, all right, that your money resources that you have in our company, because data can help you to generate more revenue when you can analyze the data, and therefore companies should pay a bit more attention to the collection of data. All right, so because how you collect the data determines how good the data is. Okay, so the source should be good and should be reliable, and the data should be consistent throughout the organization. All right, so we need to have a lot of tools to make sure that data are properly stored and properly then retrieved and utilized by whoever need to utilize the data. Okay, but today we have the problem of a lot of companies putting the data into cloud, right? So is the cloud safe enough to store your data? Well, I will ask the same question. Is your own premises safe enough to store the data? Okay, so it's the same thing. I mean, you think that cloud can be hacked. Equally, your data center can be hacked. So don't think that because you store in some cloud service provider, therefore you are more prone to attacks. Now, similarly, if you put your data in your own premises, you have to have backup plan, contingency plan, you have business continuity plan. Similarly, the cloud service provider will also have business continuity management, and you should also have backup data stored in a separate location, not everything into the cloud, right? So you should have a backup sort of a regime to make sure that data, if lost, can be retrieved and can be restored. Right. So my answer to your question is that organization can benefit very much from the proper use of data, and when you become a data-centric organization, then the organization becomes very efficient. They are lean because we're talking about agile here. The company becomes more agile because nobody need to go around the whole company to search for a piece of data. Everything is already detailed in the governance documents. All right. So I would say manage your data well, they are going to pay you dividends.
Manage your data well, they're going to pay you dividend. All right, thank you, that's the punchline you just mentioned about the power of having data. So you want to get dividend, manage the data, decide what you want to collect, and then you build a process to protect them, make sure that you secure them, and then if you just keep them right away, and then it will pay you dividend. So with this, viewers, I'm done with my question. It's going to be your time to ask your questions. So we got some stunning questions. So with this, Alex, I'm moving for the viewers' question right now. So the first question is coming from Simon from Business Manager. Hey, I found a startup in fintech, and in last 3 years of time, my company has been grown to 150 people. And to be honest, I was not really focused about data governance at all. But now I realize that I should have done something right now, immediately keep going on. So what kind of budget should I put on for this data governance project? Simon, Alex, how do you want to say?
Yeah. What sort of budget? Well, I mean, actually, not very much. I mean, governance, proper governance, you just have to have the correct mindset. That is the most important capital, the mindset and discipline among the people. So if you say what expenditure, what capex you have to invest in data governance, in the beginning, not much. Okay, you just have to set the rules of governance, and later on, when you think about where you want to store your data, as I mentioned, you can store it in the cloud. Not a big problem. All right. Today, the cloud providers they are very conscious about cloud security because it's their livelihood, right? If you if you store things in the cloud and the cloud get hacked, then nobody will trust the cloud anymore. So you see, so logically, it is in their interest, the cloud service provider, to have very secure environment for everybody. So my answer again is you don't really need to invest a lot to have proper data governance. Invest in the mindset of the people and some discipline in the use of data.
Thank you, Alex, for giving your input this one. So from my side, I think Alex mentioning a lot of great points. So I will say mention probably the first one. I probably mentioned about the 4 things for you, Simon. So number 1, look at the capacity you have. What is that? You get 150 people into it. Look at what are the capacity of you have in your data governance. Let's talk about, to be frank, I understand maybe you probably have an IT department in your company. So look at what kind of capacity you have, means what kind of leadership people do you have, how senior they are. Do you have an IT manager, or do you have a senior IT manager, or do you have a CIO, or do you have an IT director? So assess this capacity, and that will define one of your costs, because that will, if you have a great capacity already, you probably don't have to add more capacity to build your right capacity. If you have a, let's say example, even an IT director with 150 people, with a fintech, probably you can get away with adding much OPEX cost in your team. Number 2, I would like to mention is about annual budget. Look at that. What is the annual budget of an IT department? What was your turnaround for the last year, and what is the forecast number for next year as well too? And if you have the budget number, your data governance costs should not be more than 5 to 15% max of that one. So if you, so in overall, that's the one number I like to look into it. So probably just do this math and stick into it. And if you have been spending more than 15%, means, which is related to number 3, so system landscape. So what kind of capacity you already have in IT, that will translate what kind of IT landscape you have already. So this is something Alex was mentioning earlier in his thing. He was already mentioning about why you're collecting and what you're collecting, and then you just start collecting into it. So if you are having build up all those your system landscape without considering what is the data for and what you're collecting for, and rather than just focusing about the sales and marketing, which is actually fair enough being in a startup, because you want to be profitable as soon as possible. Probably you have a VC backed in behind of you and who want you to become profitable as soon as possible too. But that creates this problem right now. It's something like you didn't pay the price before and probably you have to pay it right now. So look at the system landscape and probably tell your IT leadership team to create a heat map. Write down top 10, 15 capability, 10 KPIs of your IT system landscape and do a heat map. Or maybe, or you can even make it simple too. If you have a 10 system, make a heat map. Red to green, 5 levels, and you do this one, the assessment. If you have an internal capacity, do it internal capacity. If you don't have it, get someone from the market to do it for you. And then you can easily start to work on your system landscape, and that will be translate you on how much you need money to do this one as well too, because that will be inside in your data governance building budget. The last thing probably I will also mention about your incidents. What was the situation? So you probably seeing your whole thing as a black box, right? So because you have not have good visibility, look at what kind of incident you have, how many security incident you have, how many employee walked away with a lot of data, or have you seen your product information is available from your competitor, or competitor already know what you're going to do. Sometimes company doesn't understand when they're actually losing the data because they just don't have the visibility, because the realization takes probably months to get it. But one of the great way of realizing this one, any move you want to make, you see that your competitor make the move already. So that means your data probably leaked out, and you probably just simply don't have capacity to realize that one too. Or the features you're trying to build right now for your product, you see your competitor just build it out before you build it on. So pay attention to this fourth thing, and then it will translate to your budget. But again, I say this one, 5 to 15%. That could be a fair bit of number. But like Alex said, this one, it could be as minimum, because if you're already good enough on this 4, probably no extra capex could get great things done, as long you really inspire and guide your team and leadership people to onboard. Don't just tell the CIO or whatever IT lead to do it alone, but be on part of this one on the journey and support the person to build this one, and then being very rigid to execute in your organization too. Because it's, again, I told you, Simon, I want to tell you, idea is great, idea is cool, but it's all matter how you execute it. Execution, the most important thing. So and you will need to work on that execution a lot. All the best, Simon. And if you need more advice, go ahead and drop an email below, and probably myself and Alex happy to give you more advice on this one too. So with this one, I'm just moving to the next question, probably the last question for tonight, because we're already running out of the time. This question we want to do, this one is about, hey, this is James from Ho Chi Minh City. I want to start my journey as being a customer centric. So I have a lot of data, but I don't know where I can start to look into this journey to being a customer centric, to use our data. Because right now, all my leadership people do is about guessing the customer behavior. Pretty dangerous thing. Alex, how do you want to say it?
Okay, customer centric. You have to put yourself in the shoe of your customer, and what I advocate for a lot of some of these companies that I deal with is you have to look at the customer life cycle. That means the whole customer journey review. So when they first become your customer, and what does he do until he exits and stop being your customer. All right. So from that customer journey, we can actually determine at what point do we need to collect information about the customer, and how we're going to analyze the data in order to actually serve the customer better. So that is what we mean by customer centric. All right. So everything we do is so that the customer have a very good experience doing business with us.
Thank you, Alex, for the input. So Simon, I understand your situation. I'm very happy that you finally realized that you want to be customer centric. And like earlier, Alex was mentioning about you cannot be customer centric without being data centric, and you already realized that you've been guessing as well too. Guessing is great. It can test your intuition, but when it comes to business, you don't want to play poker, right? You want to play the ball blindfold, so you need to get the data. So I don't know what is the status of your data landscape right now. I don't know the capacity you have. Do you have a chief data officer, or how many years of data have you collected from your customer? Are you selling locally or regionally, or you have been selling in a very domestically? I don't know that scale, but all I like to tell you that try to build up your data lake, and in a very early stage. As soon as you can build up a data lake, when you have so many inputs coming from your all different applications, probably I'm sure that you build up so many applications, you probably don't have an ERP right now. So build a data lake, get inflow all those data flow, build the right person, probably having a in-house person who can really understand and data, get a consultant from the side. I'm telling you something cost effective, and build the right data structure to structure the data. It's very important. Building the right data structure is really, really important, because if otherwise your data lake will be completely useless and you cannot able to translate the data. So get the right data structure, put it on your data lake, and run and data analytics tool on top of it. You can find a lot of great tools out there. You can talk about W, you can think about Power BI. There's a lot. I don't know, you probably, if you're partnering with Microsoft, it's much easier to go with the Power BI. If you have been already working with Salesforce, because your sales, probably W is a great option as well too. But this is not the only two. There's a tons of other great tools too. Like an example, if you want to, IBM also have a great analytics tool as well. So if you have an infrastructure already with IBM system, maybe you could use the Watson and that analytical tool as well. So then when you can do this one, then your leadership team will start to have an input. So this is where it's again very important. When you have the data analytic tools available, create the culture of your leadership team to look into that analytic report regularly, because they will try to overrun with their experience and with their intuition and being sometimes being ego, not to look at the data, but just to say that what they think. So if you could inspire them, and if you could guide them, and if you lead them and can build that culture to look at the data, you will see a big win for your business in short to mid-term time. And all the best, James. And I think that if you've been looking into it, I think that you already started to work in the right direction. All the best.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alex. It's been a great pleasure to have you in our show as well too, and I'm sure there's a lot of key takeaways was been taken out from this show. And thank you very much for your time. Before we wrap up, do you want to share any particular thing to the audience about the data governance?
Okay, yeah. I just want to reflect on this issue that some of us think that the amount of data depends on how much you want to spend on data governance, depend on the size of your company. It's actually, it is dependent on the size of your customer database. Okay, how many customers you have, that determines how much data you have. Okay, you may have 10,000 staff, but well, we are not so concerned about how many staff we have. Employee data, that's all we need to capture. But we want the whole world to be our customer. All right. So when you are able to serve the whole world, then you are prepared to receive the whole world's data. Okay. So have a data governance when it is still small, and when you grow big, then it will be easy to handle the data.
Thank you, Alex, for bringing up those all inputs, and I think the wrapping was great. So I will just wanted to keep my voice in the same alignment with Alex, that data is the asset. You cannot ignore it. And if you can build up a great governance around it, and you keep collecting the data and you store it, is going to give you dividend. And you want to have the dividend, right? So don't lose it out. Don't let it go. Otherwise, your data can be used against yourself by your competitor, and you'll be losing a huge amount of business. So that's something we don't want to make this mistake. All the best, viewers, and we'll be back to the next episode soon with another guest as well. And I would like to Alex, thank you very much, and I would love to have you back in our show again with another topic. It has been always great to have you in the show.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you very much.